Well, welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. I am joined by Bill and Randall, and the three of us, I don't know that the three of us have been in a room since January.
Probably not. Me and Bill did one of the first mock drafts on Fridays together, if I'm not mistaken, with Anthony Russo.
Yep. While I was driving back from Mobile.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. But that didn't really count. I was so busy.
Jim was still running the show from his car. He was doing some illegal things behind the wheel. So
I was.
That's right.
It is so difficult to give up control. It is really difficult. For the Draft Professor audience, that we'll just fill you in on a little bit of background. So many months ago in October, I met this guy named Bill on Twitter, and I said, "Hey, you want to hop on a podcast?" And Randall had podcasted with me a couple of times before that. So that was where Bill and Randall met. And then I said, "Hey, well, do we want to do scouting reports on wide receivers next week?" And then boom, Draft Professor was born.
Yeah, buddy.
Right? So
exciting stuff.
The podcast format that you see here, that was right before Halloween. So Bill and Randall each went different nights. We're back because it's wide receivers. We're back because it's Bill's night. And we're back because we're preparing for Epic Mock 25. And we have a Buffalo Bills war room. There's debates on wide receivers. And I'm like, I don't know that much about these guys, but I know who the two people to ask are. So
this guy.
Yeah. So we have Bill, we have Randall. I have a front row seat to the best podcast in the entire world. But Randall, What wide receiver are we going to go through first here? We're going to be covering the wide receivers that the Bills have met with, but go for it.
Yeah, we'll go with the second most recent wide receiver that Buffalo has visited with, which is Keandre Lambert-Smith from Auburn. He had a good testing. He had a 4.37 40, which we all know that Buffalo is looking for that speed. He's got over 32.5-inch arms, 9-inch hands, had a good 10-foot broad, had almost 35-inch vert, which is great. He took less money to go to Auburn because he thought that was a better fit, so I do love that about him too. Plays all out wide, which is kind of what we need. I think what I'm hoping for Buffalo is that they're looking for somebody to play true X and play out wide, so Keon Coleman can go a little bit more in a power slot. I think he operates way better in a power slot, push somebody out, so he's got 85% snaps out wide. I really like Keandre Lambert-Smith. I think he's one of my top guys who Buffalo has visited so far. I think his route running is good. His speed, that 4.37 speed actually shows up on tape, in my opinion. His route running is good. Needs to develop a little bit on the stem work. He gets a little clunky. I think his speed gets ahead of his feet, and he gets a little clunky at the stem work, and he also kind of almost invites some of the physicality at the stem, which I believe he should evade. He can be twitchy enough to get around and keep using that speed, but sometimes he just runs into that DB if they're playing soft coverage, and that throws his route off and his timing a little bit. So that's something he could work on. His initial step, that 10-foot broad, kind of also when it comes to explosion, kind of shows as well. I don't see a crazy explosive first step, but we're talking about a 5th round, 6th round guy sort of thing. So, it's not going to be off the charts. I do contribute a little bit of his stats to some of the Auburn's QB play. I think he could add more with better QB play. And also, I don't think he was on the first read a lot of those plays as well. So he was the second one. And that kind of, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of messed him up a little bit sometimes, especially in scrambling form. I believe he tried to bail. He would bail too quick. If he was doing a comeback route or a hitch, he would look, and then if the quarterback would start to scramble, he'd immediately bust out a vertical route and try to get as far as he can. Instead of maybe trying to find space in the intermediate or the near, he just kind of bail out, even though that's actually perfect for Josh Allen, because that's what Josh Allen wants, sort of thing. So that's a plus for Buffalo, but might not be a plus for others. But Bill, what'd you see?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail right on the head there with Lambert-Smith. This is a guy he's going to take the top off of a defense, and that's what he's built to do. I'm glad you hit on that coverage piece and that scramble drill piece, because that's something that Josh Allen will take advantage of in Buffalo. If he's got a guy that's streaking down the sideline, he can hit him deep on the left or the right rail. but it's not always the best of intentions, especially if you're sitting there at 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, you don't need a 50-yard bomb, come back to the ball, work back to it, but he's going to take the top off of defense. He's definitely a guy, you're going to take in the 5th, 6th round. He's probably going to be a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. Reminds me a lot of Nelson Aguilar from a play style perspective, the same style that you would get from him. He's a coverage beater, and that's what you're going to get out of him, but don't expect much more than that from Lambert Smith.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I guess I will dive in next. And I know if you had just tuned in just shortly ago, Jim was on with EJ and Alleel's Football Talk. They were talking about draft sleepers, and they mentioned a name that I love to hear because he's one of my guys, and he's come on here late in this process. And it's Chimere Dike from Florida. And when you turn on the tape, you see a guy that is just a coverage burner. And I mean, you're looking, 4.34 40-yard dash, 1.51 10-yard split. So he gets up in a hurry and he goes in a hurry. The good thing that he does is he has a masterful ability to find a soft spot in his own. Whereas we talk with Lambert Smith, he just takes off and goes. DK does the exact opposite. He comes back to the ball. He finds himself in those zone read spots. It has really good feel for space as a route runner. He has this really good feel to be able to manipulate leverage against the defender and kind of box them out. He's a guy you could line up just about anywhere. You could put him on the boundary. You could put him in the slot. You could use him in the backfield. This is a guy who would be a weapon. He also is a very capable punt returner and kick returner. So if you need him on special teams as a gunner, if you need him to field those special teams, this is a guy who had 4 20+ yard punt returns at Florida. So he can he could make it to where Josh Allen isn't needed as much if he runs the ball back for a touchdown now and again. My comp for him play style wise is lofty, but it is absolutely warranted when you watch the speed, you watch the mastery in zone, you watch the way he works in space. This is Devin Hester 2.0.
Wow.
And for me, if you can get that on day 3, round 5, round 6, round 7, you take it and you run with it. Yes, there are some issues. He's a little bit leaner. Ball security is a concern, especially in contact. When he takes a hit, rather than protecting the ball, he almost gives it up rather than give himself up. So that's the biggest concern that as a coach, as Sean McDermott's going to want to teach him, hold on to the rock. It hasn't manifested itself in fumbles yet, but getting to the next level, the guys are bigger, the guys hit harder. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing that I would teach him. But this is a guy that you take in the 5th or the 6th round. He's a coverage beater. You throw him out there when you need a 50-yard bomb. You throw him out there on 4th and 10 and watch him return a punt 60, 70 yards up the field for a touchdown.
That's awesome. Okay, so my question, because I haven't done much research on DK because we threw him in pretty late. I have 2 questions for you. Mm-hmm. First question is, why is he at 5th round, 6th round? Because I am looking at his combine numbers. His combine numbers are insane. First of all, a 151 on the 10-yard is insane. 128 on the broad. Mm-hmm. Vertical was almost 39. He had a 6.82 cone. So what's missing in his game that leads him to a 5th or 6th rounder? Other than the light frame.
So other than the light frame, the big things is obviously his entire career path. He started at Wisconsin, which was a traditionally run-heavy offense. So this is a guy that didn't get many opportunities. When he got them, he took advantage of them. Transferred to Florida this year to kind of open up his game a little bit more, and you saw that opportunity as it opened up a little bit more. The big thing is, and this is the concern that I have with DK, is he is all gas, no brakes. He struggles to gear down and slow down, especially on a comeback or a curl route. And with that, there's a lot of wasted motion in his transitions to coming back to the ball that allows defenders to keep up with him. So it kind of erases that large gap he builds. But it's definitely something that he can work on. But he's a guy, if you're going to put him out there, it's got to be on a slant to the house. It's got to be a go ball. It's got to be a post route. You don't want him running the curl routes or the comebacks. You'd rather have him running the backside digs and the go balls.
We don't need anybody to do any more comebacks or curls in Buffalo. We're good on that.
Then he's right up your alley.
So, Bill, is the Hester comp based upon the fact that he returns kicks, or is the Hester comp because you could manufacture touches for him? Like, because when Devin Hester switched to wide receiver, he got manufactured touches. How would you comp DK to Hester in the way an offense would use him?
So
does the
when
comp
you
stick?
Yeah, so the comp still sticks. The big thing from Hester, the Hester to DK comp, is not that they both returned kicks. It's that they were both fluid movers in space. They were athletic freaks. Their original position, DK wide receiver, Hester at corner, probably isn't the round peg, round hole fit. There's obviously other spots you could probably use DK out of the backfield. You could use him in the slot, a gadget player. So that's where that kind of plays into hand. If you're going to use DK and manufacture touches for him, the easiest way would kind of be as a jet screen or a bubble screen or even a fake handoff. You could even use him out of the backfield and get him going out wide off either tackle as well. He's a type of guy, just like Devin Hester, you want to get him moving because like we talked about with DK 1.5, 110-yard split, he gets up and going in a hurry. So if you're going to run him on a jet sweep across, by the time he gets that ball from Josh Allen, he's already taking off and rounding the corner, just like Devin Hester.
Nice. I love that. All right.
Nice.
Well, yeah. I gotta watch
We're
more
cooking.
tape on him.
We're two receivers in and we're cooking.
Yeah. Craft's over. We're good.
Yeah.
All right. I will obviously biasly go with Isaac Tesla that we're going to talk about, of course, because they met with Buffalo, University of Arkansas. 6'3.5", 214 pounds, 31-inch arms, big old hands and 10-inch hands. He started in a JUCO, moved his way up into Arkansas for 2 years. University of Arkansas, they use a lot of RPO, air raid situation. That's where Treylon Burks got his famous profile for him. As you know, when it came to KJ Jefferson, it was an RPO. KJ held onto it, then threw a go ball sort of thing. So when you have somebody like Isaac Tesla, and you have somebody like Andrew Armstrong got a lot of those targets when Isaac Tesla did not. But he's a very underrated prospect for sure. He plays a decent amount in the slot, but I think he's better outside. I think Buffalo would use him outside. He had 0 drops in 2 years at Arkansas, sticky hands. I believe he only had 1 fumble that came on a sick route that he ran against Texas A&M. But he can play both. He's got good physicality to beat in man coverage and press man. He's fearless in the middle of the field. He will run that inside post, and he will catch that ball and take a hit, and he will not drop that. He does not care about that contested catch situations. 75% at that rate, which is great. He takes a good slot seam route that he's very good at. He can adjust to scrambles well. And when he catches that ball, I believe he ran a 4.43 40 for 6'3.5", which is mega impressive. He will leave people in the dust. With the Texas A&M game, he did a slot seam route, adjusted on the scramble, gained the separation on the outside, and by the time he reached the end zone, the DB was 10 yards back. Super impressive. Will not get rid of it. The one thing that I do need to work on is stem work for sure. On his slants, he takes about 3 extra steps, which is more impressive than like even 4 steps, like too many steps on slants. He will take the physicality, which is not bad because he can play through it, but it will mess up in NFL timing. But really, he's got a lot to his game. I think he slept on because of the opportunity that he didn't really have much at Arkansas and before that. But the stem work needs a lot of work. But that's all coachable in my head, to be honest. Jim, I'm sorry. Bill, what'd you say?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. You hit the nail on the head there. Isaac Tesla is a guy that is being slept on heavily because when you watch him, he's a big body guy, very explosive. Not only did he run a 4.36, that 1.51 10-yard split that we just had for DK, go ahead and mirror that to Tesla too, because he ran a 1.51 split. And at his size, that's explosion. I'm with you that stem work and that route running work, he telegraphs a lot of his stems coming back to the ball, and it allows defenders to close in on him. But this is a guy, he's big, he's fast. There were a few concentration drops that I saw. It didn't mirror itself into a pattern, so it's not something like that's a big red mark negative, but it is something he's got to learn to deal with. My comp for him, pretty crazy that we're having the draft in Green Bay because he comps well to a very famous Green Bay receiver. He's actually one of the few that they took in the first round. Javon Walker when you watch Javon Walker when he was coming into the draft way back in the day, a lot of the same things that he did, Tesla does as well. Big body, explosive, good with the ball in his hands, had some issues telegraphing his routes. He eventually worked that out and turned into a great Hall of Fame level receiver. So that's kind of the play style that I would see from Tesla. Do I think he's going to be a guy that you would put as a wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 3? Not necessarily. Like you mentioned, maybe as a power slot, kind of kick Keon Coleman outside a little bit more. But this is a guy, he's a very Swiss Army knife, chess piece type of weapon that I would use.
And a steal in the 5th round, without a doubt.
Exactly. So I know I just talked up Chimere DK as a special teams ace and a gunner and a returner. I'm going to double down on special teams tonight because I'm bringing all of the value for you guys in Buffalo. You're welcome. We're gonna go. Arian Smith.
We need one.
Hey, Bill, we'll invite
Arian
you to
Smith.
the parade.
Sorry,
we will invite Bill to the parade. Like
that's fine.
I was actually wrong. I was wrong. I was guessing who you're going to go with next, but I was wrong. Go ahead.
I would say, so I'm going Arian Smith here out of Georgia. And when you watch Arian Smith, he is a speedster and he's got big play potential written all over him and all over his game. Elite speed, elite acceleration. The guy gets up, he goes quickly, and he takes off, 4.36 with yet another 1.51 10-yard split. I'm starting to think the person timing these 10-yard splits just hit the watch at 1.51 and didn't continue on further. Yep, 151. Yeah. We're good.
Sounds right.
But you see Arian Smith, he's got a really good track background. This is a guy, the big play potential, takes the top off of a defense in a hurry, versatile athlete. This is a guy you can put back there in punt return situations, kick return situations, use him as a gunner on special teams as well. Does have a good ability to high point the ball. The problem is, as a receiver, he is very inconsistent, and I am putting that politely. This is a guy has a route tree that needs to expand beyond go balls and posts, struggles with drops and concentration issues, and has for some time. You go back to 2022, he had a 27% drop rate. 1 out of 4 balls he's dropping is not going to get him on an NFL roster. In addition to that, there is a bit of an injury history, nothing major, but just minor nicks and bruises that have added up, causing him to miss time and stunt his development and growth. But he also still struggles with those drops and those concentration issues. You saw it a lot. There were many games throughout the Georgia season, especially as they made their way, through the season. I hearken back to a couple in the SEC championship. Arian Smith wide open on the right rail, throws it right over the top, layers it in, and it just falls right through his hands. Mm-hmm. Those are the types of plays he's got to learn to make at the NFL level if he wants to stick there. Ultimately, just like I mentioned with Chimere DK, Arian Smith is a guy you use as a speedster slot, get him the ball in space, and let him make some moves, bubble screens, jet sweeps, even the quick slants, kick returns, punt returns. For me, reminds me a lot of Will Fuller when Will Fuller was in Houston and what he did with Deshaun Watson while they were in Houston. How they would get Will Fuller in space, Watson throws a screen pass, lets Fuller go to work. That's the best way you're going to be able to use Arian Smith in the Buffalo offense.
Yeah, see, what I'm looking for is more on the DK side, because the difference in kind of like what you talked about DK and Arian Smith was in those short ones, like what I saw a lot out of Arian Smith was his short ones are quick screens, just a quick turn, catch the ball, run sort of thing. And with DK, you talked about slants and taking it off. We have Khalil Shakir. Khalil Shakir is great with wide receiver screens just like that. He avoids everybody and gets through. So, we don't need that in Buffalo sort of thing. So I'm kind of out on that. But when you mentioned DK in the slants and go, we tried to do that with Keon Coleman a bunch, and we kept doing it and doing it and doing it until it kind of came to fruition, and it did. So, somebody, an extra person like that to do that. And then, Jim, go. You got something.
Oh, I was going to say, Alex Cullen was coming out of your mouth. Because when I heard Arian Smith, right? So shout out to Alex. Definitely shout out to Alex. But so Bill, we have this thing within Bill's Mafia that Khalil Shakir is pretty much all manufactured touches, and he's wide receiver 1.
Right.
Right. It's all bubble screens, everything is within what, like, average depth of target Randall is something crazily low.
3.5 for 2024. It was
right, and
he almost broke 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't need another one of those. We need somebody that can stretch the field on the boundary or work the intermediate part of the field.
Yeah, well,
Right.
Arian Smith can do that. The issue is that it's just his drop rate. Like you mentioned, the 24% drop rate, right around there. I mean, 2024 was 14% drop rate. And, I mean, the closest thing that Buffalo had to that was Gabe Davis, and that was not fun. So, I mean, I agree. I pretty much agree with everything you said at that point. I mean, and Bill, I know that you've watched a lot more tape than I have when it comes to the situation. And I've got a question is, when I was watching, a lot of the times, and I'm not a big Carson Beck fan, but a lot of times he did run those vertical routes and burn them, but Beck even went towards a more contested catch throw to the other side of it. And I was wondering, do you think that might have been a trust issue with his drop rate, or do you think that was maybe Carson Beck, maybe just staring down his first read?
A little bit of both. It's been known, and when you watch Carson Beck, he pressed a lot, and I think the pressures of him being the number 1 overall guy from the start of the year kind of got to him. So he pressed himself to try to make those big plays to those contested catch guys, and that guy's right there, I'm going to throw it to him, rather than working through his reads. It is also a bit of a trust issue, because if I have a guy, like you mentioned, 14% in 2024, 27% in 2022, I don't think he's had a drop percentage in the single digits in his entire career in Georgia. When you have a guy where your sole job is to catch the ball and you can't do that as a quarterback, I'm going to stop trusting you to do that and say, okay, I'm not going to target you. I'm going to make you show me that you can handle it. So that's part of the issue too, is that if your quarterback can't trust you to catch the ball, they're not going to throw you the ball. If your offensive coordinator can't trust you to catch the ball, they're not going to design plays for you, because what's the point? It's just going to be another down burned. Right. So that's where, if I'm Arian Smith and I'm getting drafted to Buffalo, or I'm getting drafted into the league, that's the challenge, is to be able to say, okay, what that was at Georgia with those drop rates, that's the old me. I've got to bring out this new me and show that I can hold on to the ball, spend a few months on the jugs machine every day working on that. But ultimately, he still brings value even with those drop issues. But you're right. If it comes down to Chimere DK or Arian Smith, give me DK in the 5th round versus Arian Smith in the 7th.
So you have DK higher on your board, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I probably will too.
And this is what we do at the Draft Professor, right? Because Randall and I are doing a little bit of learning, but we knew who we wanted on the podcast to be the one to tell us.
Right. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna like just kind of let Bill also talk about this guy too, which was very funny, because when you were like, let me get back into special teams, and then you didn't bring up the punter / wide receiver, and I was like, it's got to be him, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we got the wide receiver from Troy. Right?
Yeah, so I'll lead it off, because I only got to watch 2 games of him when we talked about it, and he ran probably about like 9 to 11 routes in those 2 games, sort of thing. So I'll lead it off, and Bill, if you watch some more tape, then you can talk a little bit more about him. But Landon Parker Troy has been getting some phone calls and some visits and some Zoom calls for some teams. I believe Houston, Texas took one. Green Bay Packers took one, I believe, out of those 2. But Landon Parker out of Troy, 6'2", 212 pounds. He ran a 4.4 140, which was impressive. Started in Wofford, went to Troy. In 2022, before he transferred, he went 40 catches, 804 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I think that's what compelled him to transfer and go full-time into wide receiver at Troy. He had, I believe in 2024, Troy's quarterback went down. That affected his stat line as well. Yes. So that didn't kind of help him out. He was in college for 6 years, so he's a little bit older, but he was a punter turned into a wide receiver. And I think the intrigue in there is that he can operate as a wide receiver, and if he's on that roster, then you do have that 2-1 dip just in case our punter gets hurt. Just like, Buffalo in the playoff game when hit the hamstring, and then we had nobody, and we didn't know what to do. Like, nice. It'd be nice to have a wide receiver that can also punt as well. But he's a really good blocker. Right. When he's in line, blocks well, does that really well. His routes are not awful. both games, he actually didn't have a catch, but I just watched all his routes run. His routes aren't that bad. He puts in 100% effort everywhere. The interviews are really good. Draft Diamonds had an interview that I read, and his interview was really good. He majored in studio art, so nothing like football, which is very cool. And he said if he wants to support a charity or an event, it'd be the Special Olympics. I love that too. Seems like a great guy. His dad was a punter as well. So, I mean, I would love for him to succeed. And Bill, if you want to tell me how he can.
Yep. Hold on a minute before we do that, Bill. So, Randall, you've got to shout out Draft Diamonds because Ryan Talbot is a Bills fan. He is in the Bills war room.
Yes.
So he's even feeding the Bills war room information about what he knows that may not be public knowledge either. So I want to give a shout out to Ryan. Thank you for being part of the Draft Professor War Room for Epic Mock 25. He runs the Draft Diamonds website. So great work there.
Right.
But
his cousin's Draft Diamonds, right?
Yes.
I think it's both of them, isn't it?
He might be a part. Yeah, he might be a part of it. But the Draft Diamonds account is his cousin.
I thought they were both part of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Bill, hit us.
Yeah. So Landon Parker. So this is a guy. And here's my Mel Kiper voice. Now here's a guy. This is a guy that has played. He played wide receiver, then switched to tight end, then back to wide receiver, then to punter, then back to wide receiver, then to Troy as a wide receiver. He when people talk about Cam Scatteroo doing everything for Arizona State, Landon Parker did that for Wofford. There was no Wofford offense. There was Landon Parker and 10 other dudes. This is a guy that you look at his testing numbers just from the testing he did at his pro day. His RAS score would be 9.97 if you stacked his entire testing score up. Probably one of the best testing.
Three cone was number one, right?
3 cone was number one. You are correct. And this is a guy obviously has the bloodlines. Father was a punter for the Denver Broncos back in the early 90s. So he has that ability, has the speed to take a top off of a defense. He has a route tree that's not quite developed, but it's there. You see the semblances on the comebacks. You see him on the curls. You see him on the backside digs. His best stuff is in the intermediate game, the crossers, the slants, the cuts in, the cuts out. In addition to that, he does have size. This is a guy that absolutely has size. The problem is you spend 5 years at an FCS school, then you go to Troy. So you're 6 years in at this point. Where is his development curve? Have we hit the ceiling with him? Have we expanded to what he's going to be? Or is there more to develop? For me, Landon Parker is a guy, if I spend a draft pick, it's going to be a 7th round pick just to get him so I don't have to compete with other teams as a priority free agent. Because this is a guy you bring into your locker room. He probably is a bottom of the roster practice squad candidate while you work on those routes and those developments. But there is no denying he brings speed. You just think about it. The 3 cone drill we already talked about. In addition to that, his 19 bench press reps would have been number 2 at the combine as well. So he's strong. I'm glad you hit on the blocking piece, Randall, because he blocks about as well as any wide receiver in this class, not named Alec Iomanner. So if I need a guy who can block in line, and one of the biggest things when you're looking at wide receivers, NFL teams will tell you it's a block to get the rock scenario. If you don't want to block, we're not going to design plays for you. Landon Parker's willing to block. He's willing to catch, block, punt, kick. He'll go to the concession stand and work that too if he's got to do it. This is a guy that you draft him on your team. He's going to make your roster. What is he going to give you is the concern because of all that time spent at the FCS level. I would take a 7th round flyer on him. Obviously, in Cleveland, we have 4 6th round selections. So I'd throw one of those at Landon Parker just to get the versatility from him because you could use him in a multitude of ways. If you want to keep him at wide receiver, you certainly can. If you want to have him bulk back up a little bit and put him at tight end, you can do that too.
Yep.
He's got the versatility to play both ways, and he's got the speed. So he's a late round flyer guy, certainly a guy that you can bring in. And like I said, all else fails, put him in as a punter and have him be your punter and gunner on special teams.
We need a punter.
Yep.
We do. We need a punter.
Yeah.
And
check 2 boxes right
there.
there.
Spot. Now, we can give Alex Fulham what he wants because we can keep 6 wide receivers.
Boom. See?
Right? Yeah, we are problem solvers here at the Draft Professor.
Yeah,
like,
All right, you're up, Bill.
All right. So I'm going to talk about one of the speedsters that's kind of been disappointing so far. And everybody was really high on him coming into the season, and now it seems like his counterpart's kind of flipped out, and it's Isaiah Bond from Texas. And when you turn on the tape for Isaiah Bond, you see a guy who's got explosive acceleration. This is a guy that puts cushion between him and corners very consistently and very easily. He also is a natural hands catcher. You're not going to get a lot of chest catches with him. Obviously, being on the smaller side of things, it's a little concerning. And when you look at his testing numbers, 5'10", 5'10" and 5'8", 180 pounds, arm length of 30.5 inches. So you kind of wonder how you're going to use him size-wise. But what's weird is when I would watch his tape, the numbers I got, 4.39 and a 1.51 10-yard split, with, again, 1.51 10-yard split, I'm starting to debate that with the NFL Combine at this point. But a 4.39 40-yard dash time, that doesn't show up on his tape. You see 4.3, 4.29, just like what Matthew Golden ran. So that's what is really weird to me. But Bond had the ability, you could line him up outside, line him in the slot. Again, another special teams value. Punt returns against Alabama looked deadly on special teams against Alabama, moving in space. A very crafty route runner, probably one of the craftiest route runners in this class, especially on the head fakes. When you watch his heads fake on in-breaking and out-breaking routes, this is a guy that has that ability to make people miss. The big concerns, obviously 180 pounds. It's an undersized guy. How's he going to hold up over a 17-game season? The production never quite really matched the athletic potential that he had. You see a guy that runs a 4.39 and a 1.51 that's got that burst and that acceleration and that explosiveness, but only had, one 100+ yard receiving game. You kind of have to question, does he know how to use his athletic talents? In addition to that, he sometimes will rely too heavily on speed rather than using a tempo to set up those receivers and set up those corners for success. The other big question, and everybody's talked about it here recently, is Isaiah Bond's character concerns. There's rumors out there that he's got some character concerns, that he's got some issues. I've reached out to a couple of sources that I have not heard anything concrete. So for me, it is not an issue. What is the issue is I have a guy who looks like on tape he runs a 4.3, 4.29, and then goes to the combine and runs a 4.4. What Isaiah Bond speed am I going to get?
Right.
All that being said, this is a guy right there at the top of day 3, round 4. I would take him somewhere in that 100 to 125 range. Reminds me a lot, and you guys are going to love this in Bills Mafia because it's a hark back to 2019, John Brown.
Yep.
John Brown. The same things that John Brown did for you guys in 2019, Isaiah Bond can do for you in 2025, and add some special teams versatility as a punt returner and a gunner as well. But it is a little bit concerning. You have to ask yourself, what Isaiah Bond am I going to get? Am I going to get the tape version or am I going to get the testing version?
Right. Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but was Isaiah Bond's character the concerns and ones that were being compared to Jermaine Burton? Was that the I don't. That's like kind of unfair. Taking it. Oh, nice. Thanks, Prisha. That's kind of unfair because remember, Jermaine Burton got basically kicked off a team and then got in a fight after the game. So that's really unfair of Isaiah Bond. I'm also out on the character concerns. I don't think they're an issue either. And I think when Bills have done a dinner with him, have done a workout, have done everything along those lines, and there was speculation for what was it sort of thing. Was it trying to feed out the character concerns, have conversation? And I honestly think it's more or less of, are you going to get Isaiah Bond pre-high ankle sprain? Because if you look like in 2023, he had he had 4 touchdowns, 20+ yards or air yards more. Average depth of target was 35 yards on those 4 touchdowns. So he had those, and we didn't see it much in 2024 because of the high ankle sprain. But if you look back in 2024, before the high ankle sprain against the Michigan game, he had a really good game off the ball and on the ball. He dragged 3 people on a deep crosser that left an inside seam route, one-on-one. He had a hand in carrying a safety on a corner post route to the back corner pylon that made the inside open on a one-on-one sort of thing. And he had a good stat game in general. They were all good. Burned CBs with like 6 to 7 yard separation. He had really good route running. So if he didn't have that high ankle sprain, we probably would be talking about Isaiah Bond in the late first, mid second round, to be honest. So I think the extensive work was based on what are like it's time. There's enough time now where you should be close to your 100%. Let's see what you do in your workout and how you are, sort of thing. Because if you look at, his, I believe, was it his final game in the Georgia game, his routes, he couldn't set, he didn't really separate that often. And Isaiah Bond could separate his go routes covered, his comebacks covered, like everything was covered. And you can tell that he just didn't have that step. So I think the extensive work is, are we going to get pre-high ankle sprain Isaiah Bond, and can we do that, sort of thing?
So I want to piggyback on that a little bit. So Alex Cullen and several other members of Bills Mafia have pointed out that I think Buffalo has had 30 visits with 120 players over the last 5 years, or something like that. It was 120 players, and Buffalo's drafted 20 of them. So 20 out of 120 of the visits.
Right.
So to piggyback, what you were saying, I think the visit with Bond, it's more of a medical check.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right. So it's somewhere between character and medical, because here would be another example. Omar Norman Lott was another 30 visit. And it was interesting because when Newt and Owen were doing the scouting reports on Omar Norman Lott, I was like, okay, Buffalo's not drafting. And this was back in November. And I'm listening to the scouting report, and there was enough concerns there. So it's well, if New England, if Buffalo knows that New England or the Jets or Miami is interested in the player, we can bring them into our building and we can try to get a scouting report, because would anybody here be shocked if Miami drafted Bond?
No, never.
No, not 100%.
Right?
I'd be shocked if they didn't draft
Isaiah
Bond.
receiver if we've ever seen one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the Senior Bowl visits, because Shakir played in the Senior Bowl. Josh Allen played at the Senior Bowl.
Right.
I think who plays at the Senior Bowl or who we meet with at the Senior Bowl is more telling than a 30 visit. So I think with Bond, it's a medical check. Bill, I agree with you. If he's there in round 4, you almost have to, just off the athletic ability alone.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a desperate team in round 3 that's going to take it. And Buffalo doesn't have a round 3. You think Cleveland will?
100%. 100%. And the reason I say that is, with Elijah Moore as a free agent, there's going to be slot snaps wide open. And Cleveland has shown that they are not risk averse to character concerns, clearly. So they're a team that they're going to they've brought Isaiah Bond in as well. And I'm glad you hit on that on 30 visits. Not only is it a character check, a medical check, but a lot of teams use those 30 visits to scout other players that they know are potential fits for their division. And I harken back to Cleveland when they brought in Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker is going to likely end up, if he doesn't go Carolina, he's a Baltimore Raven style of linebacker. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler-esque linebacker. He's a Cincinnati Bengal-esque linebacker. So bringing those guys in, those top 30 visits, everybody knows about them. So you're not gaining anything by hiding it. So you kind of, use the chess piece of it. But yeah, I think for me, the value of his athletic ability alone, if he's there in round 4, I would take him. But someone is going to be desperate enough to say, hey, this is a guy who's athletic. He's explosive. The speed is there on tape. You also have to factor in a bit of the quarterback play as well, because when you watch Texas tape and you see Quinn Ewers struggle with timing, Isaiah Bond's routes are built on pacing and spacing. And when Quinn Ewers can't get the ball to where it needs to be on time, it affects that pacing and spacing. So Bond has to slow down, speed up, and can't accurately get to where he needs to. If you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, who can play with timing and anticipation, or even a Lamar Jackson, or even some lesser quarterbacks like Tua Tagovailoa who can throw with some timing and anticipation, you're going to erase that concern. So that has to factor into it a little bit. But yeah, ultimately for me, Isaiah Bond, if he's there in round 4, I take the hit. I could be convinced of it in round 3 if the need is there for my team. There's a few: Cleveland, Miami. You could look at some other teams, maybe even Jacksonville. If you really wanted to get fun, Cincinnati, if you wanted to throw him in the slot too. But
Well,
I think
Cincinnati
ultimately
will riot if they take a wide receiver on day 2.
Fair point. Fair point.
Well, it's a very fair point. But that's the conversation you have to have is if you're a team.
Burton and Isaiah Bond deserve each other.
Yeah. Didn't Yoshivas gain like 20 pounds? Like he's trying to set out on a mission sort of thing. So don't count out Yoshivas. But I agree. I mean, and I'm curious, like, people are saying the character concerns, which again, I do not care about, but like, it's his final year. He's got to go to the NFL draft. Having a high ankle sprain midway through the year is rough. And then Matthew Golden, like, I love Matthew Golden, first round wide receiver sort of thing, but then he started getting the majority of targets. And then even Quinn Ewers, with his bad quarterback play, because I'm not a Quinn Ewers big fan either, but he was thrown into traffic as well while Isaiah Bond was sitting on the other side open sort of thing. So if it's frustration and it's like a me, yeah, of course you're going to be me. I'm about to go in the draft. I would like to get drafted as high as possible, and the Texas situation for him was not happening last year for him to get the best stock that he could. So frustration is a human element.
100%.
Yeah. So what other wide receivers do we have?
All right. I'll start. We got the last one in Jalen Lane. So Jalen Lane, I think, was one of our first top 30 visits that we did with the wide receivers. Shorter, 5'9", almost 5'10", 191 pounds, so he's got a little good bulk to him. 4'3", 440, so super fast. This one was a 150 10-yard split, if I'm not mistaken, Bill. So
you are correct. This one is 150, folks, not 151.
Yeah, there you go. Super explosive, even in his testing. 40-inch vert, 11-foot broad for a 5'9" guy is insane. Played mostly in the slot, had insane amount of yards after the catch for reception at 8.3. He's in the back of my top 30 wide receivers for Buffalo. Some of his games were uninspiring, like the Marshall game was kind of got swept away. Didn't really have much about it. He's very good in zone coverages for that second level. I think that's the best thing that he does at is locating that second level in zone, finding that spot, and then just kind of like taking off after that. The Marshall game was uninspiring. The Miami game was a lot better. He started out cold, and then he took one to the sideline. He had a nice catch. He's kind of hit or miss when it comes down to it. He shouldn't be in blocking sets, but if he is, he's a liability. He can't block at all based on size and strength sort of thing. He's got good route running. His character is through the roof. Shout out to David, the Philadelphia reporter / that helps us out in Draft Professors. He talked to his family and Jalen Lane. High character guy, high family. Everybody kind of loves him there. So I'm not taking anything away from him. I think he has a little bit more to develop other than in somebody like Isaiah Bond or Keandre Lambert-Smith, but he has the tools to do it, and he has that mentality. So it's still a steal in the 6th round, but I don't think he can get past the 6th round. Phil, what'd you say?
No, you hit the nail on the head. This is a guy that is going to be a little bit further down the board for me just because of that size with Jalen Lane. But, he is a guy, he can open up his hips and just fly. He's going to go deep down the field. He's got the ability to come back, but that's not really his game. A good run after catch option. This is a guy, the screens, the hitches, the quick slants, that's what you're going to want to get. You want to get him the ball in space and watch him make magic happen. He also provides special teams versatility as well. He is not the in space kind of juke around style of runner, though. This is a north-south guy. This is I have 1-5 10-yard split. I am going to get north in a hurry and just blow by you. Obviously, the size is a concern when you're looking at a guy of his size and his stature. 5'10", 190 isn't anything to, really shake a stick at. But, he is a guy that can put safeties on their heels. Deep crossers, slants, posts. He's going to make safeties pay attention. For me, reminds me a lot of Isaiah McKenzie.
Yep.
That same style of wide receiver that you got from him, you're going to get from Jalen Lane. I would take him somewhere in round 6 or 7 just because of those size concerns. It's going to pigeonhole him into a slot guy for the rest of his career. And that's not a bad spot to be, but you don't spend 4th, 5th, 3rd round picks on super slot guys for the rest of their career. Those are the guys you find on day 3. You stash them on the practice squad, call them up for a couple of games when you know you're facing a team that can't handle 3 wide receiver sets. But all that being said, this is a guy, the biggest thing that I would like to see him do is working back for the ball. We talked about it a little bit earlier with Keandre Lambert-Smith, how he just runs go routes on those scramble drills. Jalen Lane runs back to the ball, but almost parallel to the quarterback. A lot of times I would see him on the go route on the comebacks. He would cross, come back, and then continue crossing. Almost like, hey, I'm open, give me the ball, but I'm going to turn and run as soon as you do rather than coming back to it. So that's where I would sit with him. So I know that was all the ones we had originally talked about, but I brought a couple of goodie bags for the folks in Bills.
Can we get one more before we go to the goodie bag? I'm all for the goodie bags. I like goodie bags.
Yeah.
Jalen Royals was announced.
Yeah, it was today. Yeah.
So, Randall, do you want to kick Royals off and then pivot that to Bill?
Yeah. I am a big Royals fan. Jalen Royals, he's got good size to him. He's only 6 foot, but he's got that 205 weight, which I love. He's got a little shorter arms, but he's got good hands at 9.5. He ran a 4.4 240 with a 1.49 10-yard split, which was incredible. He's got decent testing and agility, but really what he is, which shout out to Ryan Talbot when we were going through Bills comps. Ryan Talbot had him as Brandon Ayuk, which I love. Some people said Terry McLaurin. Some people said Jamar Chase light. An emphasis on lights. But he does have that similar prowess to very physical at the line of scrimmage. So press man, he can body people and come through. He even at the stem, or if anybody's even grabbing on it, it's like he's not even phased when people are trying to grab onto his jersey. He's so focused on the ball location. Great ball locator, great hands, couple one-handed catches, everything along those lines. Does not shy away from contact after the catch. Will take the hit and fall. Has those suction cup hands. I think that Terry McLaurin doesn't play as physical, but I think his style is a little bit more on the Terry McLaurin side to the Brandon Ayuk side, but I see both. But I think he is – I don't know where he's going to go. I kind of have him at – you might have to take him at 62, or does he fall in the mid-third where we try and come up and sort of thing? Bill, you might know where the NFL is at, but I would not. Jalen Royals, if we have him at 62 and then we take him, I'd be more than happy. I think he completes our room. He goes out wide, so Keon can go in the power slot sometimes, and he's out wide guy. So I'm a big fan of Jalen Royals. Sign me up.
Yeah, no, Jalen Royals is a guy that he's a stark contrast from what we've talked about. A lot of the guys we've talked about have been a little bit later in the draft, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Jalen Royals is going to struggle to fall to pick 100. This is a guy that's probably going to go somewhere day 2, whether it's round 2 or round 3, just because you look at the testing. And he is a guy, natural hands catcher, so you don't have to worry about the drop concerns. Explosive straight line speed, dangerous after the catch. That is the biggest thing. He is a guy that is very dangerous after the catch and consistently makes people miss in space.
Yep.
Reminds me a lot of Randall Cobb in his early years when he was a burner, makes people miss, has very solid hands. And, this is also a guy that's still ascending. That he's not hit the peak of his development yet. You watch, there is consistent improvement in his production year over year. He's not hit the ceiling yet. This is a guy you're buying low and eventually selling high on. The conversation, if you're in Buffalo, has to be how comfortable are you spending a top 100 draft selection on a wide receiver? Because that's what it's going to take to get Jalen Royals in your building.
Right. Yeah, and that's the ultimate question. Before, obviously, top 30 visits are important, but also use Utah State. So I don't see any other reason to bring him in. Like when we talked about different competition and stuff, being at Utah State, I'm not sure what other intel they can get. But then Brandon Beane talked about how he'll bring competition in and that he loves the room. He said that Joshua Palmer will be looked at in a different lens at the end of next year. He talks to Keon Coleman weekly about how he's doing in the offseason and things along those lines. So to me, Brandon Beane painted a picture that our wide receiver room is relatively all set, and then we want to bring somebody in day 3 to put in competition or find a stud in there with vertical speed, a la Isaiah Bonder, the people that we talked about. So I would love to get my hypes up about a top 100 wide receiver, and I'm leaning towards the possibility a little bit because they brought in Jalen Royals for it, but I'm still on the fence that they're going to take the guys that we talked about, some of the guys that we talked about before.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of collecting intel, right?
So,
there's a few teams in our division that need a receiver.
Yeah.
Right. But then some of that could also be, to your point, how much do you scout Utah State? So you don't know that much about the player. You may have not spent a lot of scouting resources. But also, to your point about the wide receiver room, if you look at Buffalo's offense, any running back, tight end, or wide receiver we draft, even if we spent pick 30 on that player, even if that was a Matthew Golden, they're coming in as third or fourth on the target share.
Right.
And I don't know if you're a team that's in the position that Buffalo is in, where you can justify using a premium resource on a player that maybe
targets.
12 months from now, they're a top 2 target person on the offense.
Yeah.
I don't even know that would be true in year 2 for any wide receiver that we draft. So I like the way that we've kind of spun up this podcast a little bit, because we're covering, like, what you're trying to do is add to the room. And we know that Buffalo needs a vertical element, and we need to get somebody that can separate in the intermediate routes. Right. To me, those are the 2 things that the offense is missing. And even if the person that you're bringing in is going to be 6th or 7th on the team in targets, you do have to realize that Curtis Samuel may not be on the roster 12 months from now.
Yeah, I don't think he will personally.
Right, unless he has to play better than he did last year, right?
2019 Carolina,
right.
Sort of thing.
And then even is Palmer on the team? Like, I guess Palmer's signed
he
a 3-year deal.
Yeah, 3-year deal. And our out is year 3. We have no out year 2.
Right. And then I'm trying to remember. So we have Coleman, we have Palmer, we have Shakir. So Shakir, Coleman, Palmer aren't going anywhere. You're trying to build the room around them.
Right. And when it comes down to it, and I know a lot of Bills Mafia is not a fan of it, but it's in a realistic fashion, is that they will not quit Dalton Kincaid and they will not quit Keon Coleman. No matter what, I wouldn't be surprised even if Dalton Kincaid have an off year. They consider a fifth year option in the future, sort of thing, and things along those lines. Like, they won't quit him. They won't quit those 2 guys until they absolutely know it, and that's just a realistic figure. So even if you don't think that they're good, Jim, you're right. No matter what, they're 2nd and 3rd on the target share, no matter what.
Right. Yeah. And then one of the questions that I know as we were putting this together, like, we put this episode together, I don't even know if we had 6 hours to prep it. So it speaks volumes. Bill, you're always prepared. Like, wow, like, humbled.
Gave me info on a kicker today.
But I guess before we do the big finish, Bill, why don't you introduce yourself? Let everybody know who you are and how they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me over on X at Spark Scouting. That's where a lot of my takes, a lot of my posts will be. I'm also a writer and draft analyst for the Right Way Sports Network. That's TWSN.net. You can find all of my written work there as well. Posted an article today about the strengths and weaknesses of this draft class for the folks that are just diving in.
Wow, Bill froze time. Like,
I thought it might have been me.
Like, better than the flux capacitor because he just froze time.
All right, I'll talk about myself, and hopefully it'll come back by that time.
Yeah. So, Randall, why don't you let everybody know who you are and how they can find you?
At Randall Slifer, you can find me on Twitter or Blue Sky. I do most of my talking on there, so if anybody reaches out to me, I will respond to be respectful. And then I also do my draft content and analyzing with draft professors, and then I am writing with Razorbacks and Buffalo Bills and everything in between, NFL, talk about college baseball over at teammbsmedia.com. I write for them, which I thoroughly enjoy as well, so you can see me on there.
Yeah, my name's Jim, otherwise known as the NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. You can find me here every day. So Draft Professor has daily draft content. Ironically, you might think this is like Randall's full-time gig because he was on yesterday. He's going to be on today. You see him here. He's going to be on tomorrow. He's going to be on Friday. And you're like married and you have a kid too, right?
Yeah, it's a late afternoon, right? I'm in Central Time, but yeah. I mean, it's we got two and a half weeks away. It's so jacked up. So this is the crunch time. This is the favorite part. It'll be sad when the Sunday hits. Yeah, I know he does. There he is.
Hey, Bill, Sam Teets says you did a good job sitting still and not moving.
He does.
Yeah, everything
you do. Everything you do is just top notch, Bill.
Yeah.
Got to.
But this week is Epic Mock 25. Mm-hmm. Epic Mock 25 is the largest internet mock draft. We have 32 people drafting for 32 teams, 7 rounds, 257 players. We have podcasters like Randall and Bill that have done enough homework that we are confident that they can talk about the 257 players that are drafted. And there's not a lot of draft analysts anywhere that can do that, right? Because that doesn't mean that you studied 257. That means you studied 500 so that you know the 257 that people will randomly talk about in round 6 and 7, including a few of the ones that we did on this podcast. Mm-hmm. So Epic Mock 25, the Draft Professor podcast starts at 6:15 p.m. Eastern and will likely go till about 11 p.m. each night. Round 1 on Thursday, rounds 2 and 3 on Friday, rounds 4 through 7 on Saturday. You will see Bill Thursday. You will see Randall Friday. Yeah. And then you will see other people on Saturday. And obviously, if you have followed the Draft Professor, you will probably recognize a few of the people on the podcast. You will also see war rooms. So I know for the Buffalo Bills, we are going to have a war room on a different station. So just pay attention to the feeds, and we'll be tagging Randall and myself and a few of the other people that are in it. And you will probably recognize a few of the Buffalo Bills personalities that are in it. So I'm very humbled that those media people are contributing to Epic Mock 25. That being said, one of the things that I had suggested in the chat as a good way to finish, my opinion is that the wide receiver Buffalo adds has to do 2 things. They have to give the offense a vertical element. And they also have to replace Curtis Samuel, because I don't think Curtis Samuel is on the team next year. But you can't expect a rookie to come in and do that. So to me, the obvious choice for that is Savion Williams. But
of course,
Bill, if you had to pick a receiver that could give a vertical element and then do some of the things that a Curtis Samuel does for an offense, gadget plays, orbit motions, things of that nature, what wide receivers in this class resonate to you?
Don't steal my guy, Bill.
You know it's coming. So there's a couple. There's a couple, and obviously the Kyle Williams from Washington State shows up pretty heavily. There's one guy that I want to talk about that I brought as a goodie bag that I was going to discuss. Ty Felton from Maryland. Mm-hmm. A true speedster, true intermediate route runner. He, ran a 4.37 and a 1.51 10-yard split. Another 1.51. I'm just going to put that on a t-shirt. 1.51 10-yard split, folks. but true speedster, but also has really good separation as a route runner and working in the zone. So he's going to be able to give you the best of both worlds. He's not really the gadgety type of guy, but he's a very good zone beater. He's a very good coverage guy, very good tracking the deep ball as well. Probably the best deep ball tracker of any guy in this class. If you wanted to go a little bit more on the gadgety side of things, obviously there's guys at the top of the class, Luther Burden III, Xavier Restrepo, probably not going to be in the range for that. Savion Williams, like you talked about and hit on as well. I would still throw my hat in the ring. If you're going to go with a guy late, Chimere DK from Florida is my vote for Buffalo. If you're going to take a guy early, you're probably going to end up looking at a Ty Felton or a Kyle Williams, who's getting a lot of draft hype. I'm hearing, that he may not make it out of round 2 at this point, based on what I'm hearing. So a very stark rise. I don't have him there. I have him as a 4th round grade, so you could get him in round 3. But based on what I'm hearing, I don't see that happening. So, but those are the types of guys that I would probably, if I'm looking for a gadgety type of guy, that's kind of where I'd look. The good news is you don't necessarily have to replace both this year. You can get a gadget guy this year and already looking forward to the 2026 class, as I do because I'm insane. That class has a lot more of the zone beater, the intermediate coverage wide receivers that you would look for to replace him. So you could, in theory, take a guy on day 3 this year for your gadget plays, come back next year, take another round 3-4 guy to replace the other part. Yes, you have to burn an extra roster spot to do it, but you could do it that way rather than having to go and spend a round 2 pick to get a Kyle Williams in your building.
No, for sure. And then I was like, I think the only person that I can think of that you didn't mention is Ricky White the third from UNLV. He's a lot like Curtis Samuel when it comes down to that. But I agree. I don't think that I would go for a Curtis Samuel replacement. Wait till 2026. Free agents who I don't think will re-sign with the Lions, like Jamison Williams, would be a perfect. Let him go. Pick up Jamison Williams. You got the speed and that intermediate and those sweeps and stuff like that he does. So that would be great. You could trade, there was like a week window of us looking at Jordan Addison. If Jordan Addison is gone from the Vikings, that's even a trade partner in the offseason that could happen. Marvin Mims Jr., maybe Broncos don't want to hold on to him and he's a trade candidate. But then you're right, you can look at the 2026 class. I don't have a big 2026 big board yet, but we did do scouting reports on like Antonio Williams from Clemson. I love his game against Florida last year when they used him in the run game and the pass game. He's somebody that's that gadget, Curtis Samuel-esque. I comped him to Curtis Samuel when we did our summer scouting in October and November. So I'm looking at him as a Curtis Samuel replacement in 2026.
Yeah, so if Sam Teets is listening, you got to always shout out Clemson.
Yeah, he went to Clemson. That's right. Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned the 2026 class a little bit before we wrap up. The big name that would probably fit what you're doing, a couple of guys, me having already 220 names on my big board, I'm insane. Evan Stewart, who returned to school, went back to Oregon. Darian Brown, who was at Kentucky, now at LSU. Brandon Ennis at Georgia. Deion Burks at Oklahoma. There's a lot of guys in 2026 that are going to fit what you need. And like you said, I don't think you're going to necessarily need to get that guy this year. This is a take a day 3 flyer on those gadget, the Chimere DKs, the Arian Smiths, and then come back.
Talk about Darian Brown. Yeah.
See, and I tend to believe that you draft for what you need so that when you're at this stage next year, it's not a need, right? So realistically, actually, Buffalo's draft last year it's good because even though we're saying edge is a need, we took an edge last year, so the room has some cost control. We took a defensive tackle last year, so we don't have to take a defensive tackle first. We don't have to take an edge first. Really, the only glaring need on the roster right now is corner. But to me, when you're drafting, you're trying to prevent there from being a problem. So, like, for example, if James Cook leaves at the end of next season, we drafted Ray Davis last year with the anticipation of what is going to be needed in 2 years, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Right?
I don't think running backs need to be seasoned though. That's the thing is I'm a very much if James Cook leaves in 2026, you draft a running back in 2026 and you put him out. In my
right.
opinion.
And I mean, I believe that you draft a running back every year so that it's
True.
never a problem. Right? Like you draft a running back every year so it's never a problem. Draft a linebacker every year so it's never a problem.
Yeah.
Make sure that you draft a lineman on both sides of the ball every year so it's never a problem.
Right.
Right? I mean, look at like more than likely Buffalo's backup offensive tackles would both be starting for Cleveland. I don't know that for certain, but I have a high amount of confidence at least one of them would.
Yeah, and it's just because both of our offensive tackles are often injured in Conklin and DeJuan Jones.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely correct. Maybe more so, probably only one of them with Cornelius Lucas stepping in as our left tackle this season. But yeah, the depth in Buffalo probably would start on other teams.
Yep.
And Cromer we trust.
Yeah.
Yep. So any other wide receivers we want to talk about for Buffalo in day 3, or is it time for us to do what we do when the camera's not on?
Do what we do when the I got to put down the kiddo.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, when we talked about that, yeah.
Yeah. So for the 52 podcasters of the Draft Professor, for Bill, Randall, everybody that's going to be an epic mock 25 starting tomorrow at 6:15. Thank you for watching. We will see you on a podcast again tomorrow. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.